Would you like to be able to play your PS5 with non-supported controllers like an Xbox controller? There's quite a few options that this next product that we're going to talk about today can support, but I find the dream is a little bit oversold here. Hi, I'm Clef and you're watching Game Tech Talk. Today we're talking about the P5Mate. And what this device does is very simple, and according to their own marketing material, it has a PS5 controller chip, meaning that when you plug this device to your PS5, it is recognized as a PS5 controller. But the trick with this one is you do have a USB-A female connector where you can plug wired another different controller that is not usually supported on PS5, and that will allow you to play with that controller. So let's see what's in the packaging and then let's talk about the device and my experience. It does say what it says here: USB connection, stable, zero delay. It says up to 1000 Hertz polling rate with zero latency. I don't know about zero latency, but it could very well be the case that it is extremely minimal considering we're using wired. Support for 2-player games, suitable for various USB devices. External power supply port, so if your device that you're using you need to charge while you're playing, you can do that with the extra supply port. A 3.5mm earphone port. Professional forum, better service. We'll definitely talk about that one. We have this QR code. We have this here. They provide a USB-A to USB-A cable as well as a USB-A to USB-C cable in the box as well. I'll put the measurements on screen, and this is what you have here, the P5Mate. For starters, I find that it's a little special in terms of a shape, almost like we're trying to make it look cool, but at the same time I'm here thinking it's like it's weird to put anywhere. But I guess you could, like with a double face tape, stick it to the side of drawer or something like that. But yeah, it's not like you can stand it upright. You can put it down, but you have wires coming out in all directions. Build quality, I mean, it's pretty cheap plastic. When using the QR code to get to the manual, quite frankly, it was not a good experience. It leads you to a forum, but the forum is mostly in Chinese. There is a small subsection that is in English. They do supply the initial firmware if ever you run into issues. And a small manual that shows you how to operate the device as well as links for the firmware. But when I went there, I was met with no firmware at all. So how much will that cost you? Well, they market it at $100 USD. However, it's often found on sale for $90 US. But if you buy them directly from their own website, they market this at $70 US. Not cheap. About the price of a controller, and considering how limiting that it can be in some situations, I feel like that should be $50 at most, but you know. So how does this work? The idea here, you want to plug where it says console, which is the narrower tip, into your PS5, and by the time you have this connected, you can then plug your controller at the other end of it. Because your controller will behave as would a PS5 controller, some features will not carry over, which we'll touch base. Starting with the first one is the headphone jack. So chances are you might be using another controller that has a headphone jack, for example, the Xbox controller. If you try to connect your headphones to the controller as you usually would, it will not work. That will not be carried over from the P5Mate back to your controller. It will stop at this unit, which is why you will need to plug your headphones on this jack right here. And last but not least, here you have an update button, but considering the situation of the forum, unfortunately I couldn't find anything. Of course, I tested this on my PS5. I connected the thing, then I plugged my Xbox controller. Lo and behold, I was able to play my game just fine. And when sticking to that alone, it actually worked quite nicely, I have to admit. Now, you do have to be wired everywhere. There's no possibility to use your Bluetooth antenna to connect your controller or to connect this to your PS5. So, you know, it does create a lot of wires. And with that in mind, it's probably a better experience if you game at a desk and your PS5 is on your desk. But if you are playing on your couch and the PS5 is next to the TV kind of thing, yeah, that's going to be a lot of wires to run through your living room. You know, such is the price to pay if you want to use a device just like this one. It was fun to see that you can bring a fully asymmetrical controller onto the PS5 and game as you would with no issues whatsoever. There are some caveats. Of course, the PS5 controller has extra features, for example, the trackpad. There may be situations where you're not going to be able to do certain commands and certain games, but what is, in my opinion, the most disappointing aspect of using this is that rumble will not carry over. And of course, as we mentioned earlier, the 3.5mm jack will not work as well. Also, if you are using a controller that happens to have gyro, that feature will also not carry over to the P5Mate to be read by the console. Now, the other thing that is probably, in my opinion, the biggest disappointment with this device, and something very fitting to the loyal audience of my channel, the third-party market for controllers is blooming like it never has before. Not only do we have a truckload of options on the market, we actually happen to have a lot of better options than even what first-party controllers stand for these days. My main goal with this device was to be able to take a controller like the Tarantula Pro, for example, and bring it onto my PS5, or the Apex 4 or the Vader 4 Pro, you know, controllers that have amazing quality, amazing sticks, amazing features overall, and to be able to leverage those controllers and bring them onto my PS5. The way that this device operates, it looks for a very specific device ID. And what this means is, well, an Xbox controller has a specific vendor and device ID. And I can't say for sure that this is how it operates, but I would think so, because even if I tried bringing spoofed controllers into the P5Mate, I was met with very inconsistent results. And by inconsistent, I'm not saying some work better than others. I'm saying literally some did not work. In fact, I would say that the vast majority of devices I tried using with the P5Mate did not work. And there is no app for this. So it's not as if you're able to bring a controller and create a profile to say, okay, this is what I want this controller to do to control my PS5 by pretending to be a DualSense controller. And that would have made things a lot easier if something like that was available or was possible, but because it is not the case, you are stuck to very limited options in terms of what you can bring in. Another question you may have is, well, how about if I want to use my keyboard and mouse? Well, to the same effect, it's not going to work. You're going to have another device, for example, the Corona Zen or the XIM, and that device will be supported by the P5Mate, and you will have to connect it as well. So that's an extra wire, that's an extra device, and that device would be able to convert your keyboard and mouse to something that the P5Mate will accept. Now, I don't have any of those devices, so unfortunately I was not able to test the keyboard and mouse function. You should consider watching Ignito Cub's video that he does go over what he was able to do and how he was able to do it. I'm a little torn on two ends with this product. On one end, what it does and what it claims to do, it actually does quite well. You know, I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't feeling anything abnormal in terms of latency. I was really able to play with my Xbox controller, albeit that, yes, I did lose some features, but with that said, the most important things were there and they were working absolutely fine. I didn't feel like I was getting any lag. I didn't feel like there was any egregious latency. I didn't feel like it was not responsive or buttons didn't do what I expected them to do. None of that. So the product works. But on the other end, where I am conflicted is, and maybe it's not fair of me to expect that if I'm being honest, but I feel like it's doing too little for the price that it asks. But they also have the advantage of pretty much being the only company that does what they do on the market. Now, this leaves me with this conclusion. The concept, the idea behind what it does and the way that it does it, I greatly embrace. And I would love to see this product go further. I mean, even if it has to be a different SKU, if it has to be the P5Mate Pro, where there is a simple interface to bring your own controller that is not supported by default, sure. If you absolutely want to play asymmetrical on your PS5, your options are quite limited. You have something like the Victrix BFG that I covered on the channel, the Nakon Revolution. You have a few options here and there. For the most part, it's pretty limited, and the options that will let you have an asymmetrical setup on PS5 is going to cost you quite a lot. And the reality is, if you were to buy this device and bring an Xbox controller that you may already have, it's still going to cost you a lot less. And assuming that this is all you need, well, it's going to do what it's supposed to. Last but not least, very important, when running something like that, you have the possibility of getting banned. So if you want to use that for competitive gaming, you may want to look out for that. These things, it's always hard to tell. How did it happen? When did it happen? What caused it? Ultimately, I wouldn't take the risk. If you know that you want this specifically for a competitive nature, it is a thing that can potentially be used to do some form of cheating. And because companies want to protect their online communities, they can ban you for it, and I think that's fair. Now, for me personally, I don't play competitive games on PS5, but I could be tempted to play Stellar Blade with an asymmetrical controller. And so that is it, guys. Thank you very much for clicking and watching the video. If you have any questions, make sure to drop them in the comment box, considering doing all the YouTube things, and as always, I'll see you on the next one. Peace.